You're listening to If Only I Were Wiser podcast, where Reyna brings together wisdom and raw life stories to provide encouragement and truth. So many times it's easy to become discouraged in your own pursuit of health because your story or circumstances look drastically different from your favorite influencer or even the expectations you had for yourself. If that is you, welcome! This space is for you to learn, breathe, and maybe just listen and see what wellness could look like for you. Hey friends, welcome back to the If Only I Were Wiser podcast. Joseph's joining me on this episode to kind of unpack everything that we are doing as a family, but also personally, professionally, and as a family, just some of our goals and the way that we want to tackle those from a rest mindset, and rest really being the foundation for all the things that we want to do this year. So as we dive in, we'll do a little bit of a flashback on 2024, which still sounds a little redundant as all of us are seeing everyone's 2024 recaps on social media, but I really just wanted to kick off with what 2024 meant to us as a family and how that really set the stage for kind of the faith foundation and what Sabbath really started to mean to us and how that's come about in little bite-sized pieces. 2024, as I've shared, was kind of a wild ride, but I think it was our recovery year coming from 2023 that wrecked us just post-mold. We moved twice in a year, less than a year, really. So 2 big cross-country moves, 2 duty stations, 2 community, 2 church families, and double all the blessings that came with that. So it was really sweet to just kind of have like a year of what really felt like a year of transition, but a year of getting to kind of refine the skills that we're learning in neighboring really well and diving in as a family with the time that we had with each other. So babe, what I guess was special about 2024 for you or kind of stuck out now looking back?
Yeah, so obviously the Army is a big part of my life, and that's one of the reasons why we had 2 moves, 2 communities, and everything, 2 duty stations. And really the big thing for me is, since I'm on the officer side of the house, every couple of years I can really program like a time of rest. And really what that means is just like a less than stressful job. So this year, or 2024, was really focused on some schooling. So I was able to really focus on myself personally and myself professionally, just with like going to classrooms all day. A couple of the courses here and there with minimal field time that like I personally wanted to go to, that like had no bearing on if I passed or failed the course. It didn't matter. I was just kind of there because that's what I wanted to do. So 2024 was a great year to kind of like take a breather, not necessarily like a take a knee year, but definitely a take a breather and just kind of focus on me personally, me professionally, the family, and then just like spending time with community. I definitely took time in 2024 to ensure that the people that I met, I still keep up with now, to include the people I met in like 2023. Because I kind of realized this past year, I really didn't do a good job with that. Like the first couple of years, one being after college with the people I was in college, and the people that I first met when I, got in the Army. And so I tried to take 2024 to make sure also that I did that with everyone that I left in 2023 with that first move, and then everybody that I met in 2020.
Yeah, I would say that community was a common theme. I think we prayed for really rich community with our move in January of last year. And the Lord provided in abundance tenfold. And just like I had a CrossFit community that turned into a friend community that turned into church community. And it was just really sweet to see the Lord meet that need in a lot of different areas, and then give us relationships that have followed us just because of the depth and nature of them. So that's been really cool. One of the things I would say that worked, so we'll kind of unpack what worked and what didn't work for us as a family in 2024. And we'll kind of dive into the details of Sabbath later. But that is the one thing that comes to mind is, I think because of Joseph's season of school, like he talked about, it was a little bit of a slower season for us. We just learned to enjoy the time that we had together. And I think that later manifested in what we have protected as an actual weekly Sabbath. But I think what worked really well was the fact that when you were home, and we did things as a family. We went to the pool, or we went shopping, or we were just, I think, a little bit more intentional in playing together, which was really fun, and I think was really growing and was probably exactly what Ledger needed just coming from a really transient 2023 as a family for us. And I would say, I guess you, babe, got to really, I mean, you had the capacity to play with Ledger more, but I feel like that was really healing for you as well.
Yeah, so I'll talk about two things that Reyna just mentioned. One, like finding the community aspect. I think we talked about it on a podcast a little while ago in regards to finding the people that you talk to. Mm-hmm. And that is something that's like you have to be really intentional with. And so that was the community that I started, meeting weekly and with some of the men that I had met and really known previously to this year. And being intentional with that, because community is one of those really easy things. You mentioned being restful, that there's a difference between doing something that is maybe relaxing and doing something that is restful. Relaxing maybe like playing a video game, or doing something restful maybe not playing any of those video games and reading the hour and a half prior to bed, and now you're actually recharged for the next day. So just keep that in mind when you guys are thinking about what to do. There's a difference between relaxing and doing something relaxing and doing something restful.
Yeah.
And then being at home a lot more was definitely way more convenient this time around. Once again, with the nature of just going to school, and by school I mean like it was just an educational course for the Army, so it was 6 months, getting home pretty much by 2 or 3 every single day. Really no requirement to do anything else past that. Like literally no one is texting me once when I get home. It was actually really weird, coming from the previous job of getting 20 to 30 emails every single day, plus the phone getting blown up like me bringing a charger to work because I'm on my phone, and by noon my phone's almost dying. So being present was pretty good for me, because obviously there's a lot of times when the only time that I would ever get with Ledger is me putting him down to sleep. Especially when he was going to bed at like 6 o'clock. Because when I was getting home from work at like 5, that's like dinner and then straight to bed. It's not a lot of time.
Yeah. And in terms of maybe not so much that this didn't work, but it was a stretching, learning this skill, and just a lesson for us as a couple and as a family, was learning to create space for your spouse to do things outside of the family. I think, we've talked about that on this platform. We've had episodes of like protecting that space for your spouse and how healthy it is, but I don't think we really learned how to put it tangibly into practice until this year. And just giving, like, if Joseph was like, hey, like I have a Bible study with a men's group that was outside of like a typical weekly expectation that just came up, it was addressing that with grace and love and not resentment, and being like, well, what the heck, this wasn't on the calendar, like, trying to also like help him protect the space that I know that he rarely has outside of work, and being gracious and loving, and also communicating my needs when things were too much of a stretch. And I think that was just like it was tough learning balance for us, but I think it was really, really growing for both of us.
Yeah, and there's plenty of times where, and then a lot of people like really won't like this, is if you're married or even if you're dating, it is not healthy for you to spend all your time with that significant other. Like, you're still an individual. There's a difference between like, there's two sides of the spectrum. There's like cohabitating, where like, I just go to work all day, I come home, Reyna and I happen to be eating dinner at the same time, right? So we're in the same room. And then I put Ledger to bed, and then she's doing something podcast related. Maybe I'm doing something that's relaxing, and then we just both happen to go to bed at 9:30. We're like, that's cohabitating. We're married, get all the benefits of being married. But then there's we live together, we're married together, we do all those things together with intentionality, but then I still intentionally go off on my own to do things that only I am interested in.
Yeah.
And then Reyna does those things, and then we do things that maybe one of us isn't so interested in, or vice versa, and that's our time that we spend together. So there's a real balance there of doing things on your own consistently, which kind of turns into like just cohabitating, versus like being an actual intimate relationship that acknowledges the other person's needs. Because you're not, like, Reyna and I are not the same person.
Yeah.
I am okay with, I went hunting today. I didn't shoot anything, right? But I was outside from 5:30 to 3, literally just sitting down and walking around, and that was incredible for me. Reyna probably wouldn't have enjoyed that.
No.
Right. So, but it was incredibly relaxing. And so this is where like I don't really think there's a balance. It's more of like a teeter back and forth of, hey, this was my day, and I know that I have a 4-day work week, or I have a 4-day weekend next weekend, and one of those days is going to be Reyna's opportunity to do whatever she wants, regardless of what Ledger and I are doing.
Yeah, I loved everything that you said, how you mentioned that it's more of a teeter, not a balance, and just like the loving grace that comes with. I think a lot of that came with the community we were building there, and just the prioritization, I think, of community that we took for both of us for the first time, both as a family unit and individually, like going to girls' nights with our community group and you going to a men's study, and having, I think, the space for both of those things was really healing. And I would for sure say that that's a component we're definitely bringing into this year, is if we're truly trying to make faith as a foundation and just the way that our family runs, then we have to make God like the center of it, which, we're a believing family and we try and do all the quote right things. But sometimes the army and just life makes that really difficult to just stay on the healthy spiritual disciplines that are serving you and are really soul restorative, right? So like just being in the word consistently, going to church, and being in faith community are just some of those practices. But I think that's something that we're going to protect probably pretty closely this year, is like not only community based faith nights, like going to a Bible study as a family, but also specifically protecting like me going to a women's study and Joseph going to a men's study on Tuesday nights, and making that a priority for our family rhythms.
Yeah, and I'll touch on two things in regards to like being the foundation. One, I don't want to like ostracize anybody that's like not in the army. That's just a very
that's true.
big thing for Reyna and I, obviously, because it controls most of our life. So instead of listeners who aren't in the army, regards to like laying the foundation for the future, I work loosely 9 to 5 plus, an hour or so for PT, right? So we'll call that, quick math, 9-10 hours a day.
Sure, yeah.
For the army. Or you at your job, whatever that may be, spends that amount of time working, because that's your lifestyle and that's what you need for, every single day, money, rent, what have you. In regards to like making it the foundation, you need to ask yourself, like that's the amount of time that you're putting in to have a quote unquote successful life. And then you need to ask yourself, how many hours am I putting in for God? Mm-hmm. And that's a pretty difficult thing, right? Especially for me, like I kind of came to a conclusion, like it's not that I love the army, but I am in love with work, of like the joy of doing work and then seeing it like to completion and looking back and be like, hey, I did this. And I spend, all day doing that. And then I get the same joy when like completing a workout or whatever. And that's the amount of time that I put into that. And so going into 2025, I've asked myself, once again, what I ask you to ask yourself is, how many hours am I putting in, or how many hours are you putting in for God? So many times where it's like at the end of the day, and then I'm just like, oh, yeah, I'm sitting down now, I think I'll read, but very few people, and I'm not one of those people that have done it, will like wake up an hour before, they go to the gym or whatever in the morning, and that's like their reading time. And I find myself like squeezing God in, really, rather than like making him have a foundation.
Absolutely. And that's been a conviction personally that I've tried to shift, and I've seen it just in the past 2 weeks of actually getting up a little bit early as Ledger's laying in bed and just getting in the word even for 5 minutes. That's been really healing and just really restorative for the rest of the day, and kind of gives me just a little bit of an edge regardless of what chaos comes with the day, to know that I have the word on my heart and my mind to be able to meditate on that. So kind of transition. I know this is just a spicy topic in general, and we love spicy topics, but I don't think we'd be able to talk about planning and praying and dreaming for 2025 if we didn't talk about finances and monies, and how it is crucial, I think, to have the conversations with your spouse, or even just sit down and plan through your finances with your goals and just write them out. I think this is the first year we've talked about things that we want to do, but I think it's been really cool for us to actually sit down, put pen to paper, and tangibly write out what are the financial things that we want to accomplish this year, in terms of like us going debt free. Guys, debt is not cute. It is not a wise way to steward your money. And again, I'm sure there are thousands of nuances to your situation. So if you're hearing this, I just pray that you would hear it with grace, but also take the truth that you need out of it. But yeah, debt has been a conviction of ours to just deal with head on this year. And so sitting down to talk about how we will do that with tangible steps in a budgeting Excel sheet is very realistic, and it helps us move towards those goals versus getting to November of this year and being like, oh man, like we have these bills and these bills. Wouldn't it have been great for us to have do these things? So I think just tangibly for us writing them down, talking through what we want to do, and like tackling our debt, because yeah, debt is not cute. And that's just been our own spiritual and personal family conviction this year to kind of hit that head on. But it also gives us the space to dream, and pray about some just really, I think, exciting things we want to do for our family this year, like vacation,
Yeah, and I'm not Dave Ramsey, so I'm not going to like talk a whole bunch about this. I mean, doing finances is really just like a couple thing that you should do together. It really shouldn't be like one or the other, especially if you're in the Army. Once again, sorry, people that are in the Army. If I'm gone, Reyna's got to know how to do all those things. And then it's also a thing that I can take off of her plate whenever I'm here. Yeah. Shared accounts, in my opinion, is the way to go. It's less boundaries for the person that you're supposed to be madly in love with. So if you have those boundaries, it's probably awkward if you say you really trust them and then you have this. But it's really just coming down to like being transparent, having goals. And once again, it goes back to us doing things for ourselves. When we actually identify the things that we want to do in the future, we can identify excess. And you know, to go back to what Reyna and I are going to do this year is like having a day and then potentially even a weekend a few times a year for us as individuals and together as well. Going back to you shouldn't spend all your time with your spouse.
Yeah.
So.
No, and I think that it tangibly, it puts into practice what we're preaching, right? Like if we say we want to tackle our debt and we want to create space for our spouse and we want to protect a weekly Sabbath, and this year, this is one of the challenges that we're creating for our family is not only enacting and protecting a weekly Sabbath, but we're planning and dreaming of a monthly Sabbath of solitude for each spouse. Maybe it's like bi-monthly, I guess, or once a quarter, but even like an annual Sabbath for our family, like our immediate family, just taking some time away. And if we want to have that awesome beach or mountains vacation, we have to financially plan for that wisely, right? Like at least for us, we want to be equipped to do some of those things ahead of time. I can't stand looking at charges on the credit card. That is just something that irks me. So we are sitting down, at the beginning of the year to say, hey, we would love to have X amount of money to go to the beach this year. How do we accomplish that by, mid-July? And just planning for that and having accountability, because it also keeps you accountable, and it keeps you on track to stay wise in your budgeting and stewardship on a monthly basis with like every day monthly needs. Yes, things come up, illness, all kinds of things. But it also keeps us accountable to what we say we want to do. But then it also, I think, gives us the freedom to give more freely. That's another thing that we've talked about this year is like we want to give in abundance because the Lord has so beautifully blessed us. I think coming out of mold, we watched the Lord literally pay off our credit card debt in a month because things just like happened and we got a check and we're like, okay, God, thank you so much for showing up, because we wouldn't have been able to do that otherwise. So that's just, I think, something that comes with wise financial stewardship and going debt free is you have the flexibility with your money and your budget to be able to say like, how can I meet the needs of the people around us and truly be the hands and feet? So Joseph has nothing to add on terms of the money talk, but I want to unpack a little bit more of our Sabbath. Like I said, towards the end of last year, we were really convicted about what rest looks like. and breaking up with the hurried health lifestyle. I know you guys have heard me talk about it on Instagram, but for us, it meant pulling away for a whole day. We've protected Sundays as our Sabbath day to not work. We don't do chores. We don't do laundry. I try not to do laundry and clean, but cleaning is restful for me. So we have kind of just protected that day as like, we may put on a movie. We may put on 2 movies because we don't typically do screen time in our household. So we may do a movie, or we might go on a walk, or we let Ledger play outside and do whatever. And it's just been, I think for me, really beautiful to like have extended amount of time to read. Like that's just something that is really restorative to my soul, and like get halfway through a good book on the couch for a full day when I don't really have that time with a toddler running around on a regular basis. So it's been really, really fun for me for our Sabbath. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it helps to be more organized. I'm kind of different when it comes to, you have like the stereotypical person you see in the movies that's like in the army, and then they go home to their family and like everything is still very like strict and scheduled. I'm like 100% the exact opposite. I don't want to think about what I'm going to do in the afternoon, and it drives Reyna insane.
Yeah.
And so doing this has actually helped me stay more on track, because now I know I can't do X, Y, and Z things on Sundays, such as maybe school for my schoolwork. So then that means I got to do it. I have to make sure I do it on Saturday and then Thursday and whatever. But like Reyna was saying, she mentioned that she went back and said, something that's restful or relaxing, because once again, right, those are 2 different things. And it comes down to like balance, right? We don't always want to do screen time during the week, so doing that on that Sunday is okay. It's really just not thinking about what you need to do in order to, enjoy the rest of your week. But it's also still time to like intentionally spend with God and your family as well. It's not just about doing nothing. You're doing nothing to relax with God and your family, and you're in yourself.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily doing it just to avoid all your problems, because they're still there.
Yeah, I think it comes from the lens. I think I read it in a book recently, but he talks about approaching, I think, whatever task through the lens of, does this help me, or does this allow me to worship today? So would doing the laundry or completing A, B, and C tasks today bring me closer to the Lord? Yes, then like I'll do it. If not, then no. Like, am I reading my, Fourth Wing Dragon novels gonna be, I think, as bring me close to the Lord? No, but it lets me delight in Him. It's been this place where I'm like, oh God, thank you so much for these books or these stories, or like this sunshine on my face while I'm out here reading and our son is playing outside. I think the Sabbath has just allowed me to really find simple joy and joy in the little things, even if it's not like a Christianese or faith-based activity. And then I think taking that to the next level, like we talked about, planning and praying financially, and both in conversation and expectations of what does a monthly or quarterly Sabbath look like for your spouse, and then an annual Sabbath for our family. I think when you protect a Sabbath, it gets you through the rest of the week. Like I so much yearn for Sundays, because I'm like, if I can just get to this day, then I'll be able to have uninterrupted time with the Lord. And it kind of gives me just that little bit of a boost to get me through the mundane of all the other things, Monday through Saturday. And I think that mimics what our yearning should be for heaven. And that's just its own sweet reminder in a simple way. And so I think to take Sabbath to a whole new level and actually planning for a monthly, quarterly, and annual Sabbath, it only puts us in more of a place of trust with the Lord, both in our finances to actually see that through, but in a tangible way that says, Lord, like I actually want to invest this much time with you into our relationship. Like Joseph talked about at the beginning of, how much am I actually giving the Lord of my calendar? Is it a 10% offering off the top, or is it the scraps at the end of the day?
I think the only thing that I'll add is, like, I would recommend you all go back and like find the episodes that are just Reyna and I, because what we've talked about in this episode is a tidbit of each of those episodes.
Yeah,
we've talked about boundaries, we've talked about some money, we've talked about planning and Sabbaths and community and like spending time with the Lord individually and as a family. So I'd go back and look at all of those because that's really what this episode is. It's all the things that we've really figured out, not just in 2024, but really the past 5 years, and that we're being more diligent to implement. Once again, with the job that I currently have, it's a little easier to. You might not be in that spot with where you're at in your job. We know we won't be in this spot 2 years from now, right? That's when my life will pick back up dramatically and be less than awesome when it comes to like the work schedule. So we're taking advantage of it now. That's kind of like that teeter. It's definitely, if you can make it a work-life balance, phenomenal. Good for you. That has not been the case for us. And so we've kind of figured out that the kind of the teeter of you get this, I get that, not necessarily transactional, because it's not necessarily back and forth, just depending on the season. But go back and listen to all of those, and if you haven't already, because that's really what we're talking about here, putting all that together to figure out what our life should look like.
Yeah, I think it goes back to honoring the space of what do we want our life to look like, and we have talked about it on several episodes, and this one in particular, like, we are done with the hurried lifestyle. Like, Jesus lived a very slow lifestyle. He wasn't worried. He wasn't anxious, and his days weren't marked by social media notifications or having to get in the fastest checkout line at the grocery store because it had 17 million places to be, or even just to go home. And it wasn't marked by irritability or confusion or a short temper. So that's been a conviction for our family recently and going into 2025. But I will say, I kind of want to just plug Restore here. I know that I have talked about it a little bit. I've dropped the hints, and now it's January, so we're in full launch mode. So it'll be cool just to get some of Joseph's insight as he's seen me build this out from behind the scenes. But Restore, friends, takes all of what we talked about, and it makes it tangible. It's a 6-month community group coaching container where we do just that. We take and analyze what is working and not working specifically in your health habits, in your home, in your heart, and in your family, to bring restoration to those areas. We are able to dissect together and within community, what are those relaxing habits that you think are really helpful for you, right? Like your self-care routine or just binging that Netflix show, but it's not actually as restorative as you think it is compared to some of the other habits that you can make keystone habits and provide a little bit more healing for yourself and for your family. So babe, what would you say to the person listening that's like maybe on the fence of this, or like how would you, I think maybe seeing me create it from the outside, just want to give a word of encouragement about Restore.
Well, one, I can tell you, Reyna has put a lot of time and effort into it. It's definitely not easy putting something like this together, especially for the duration that this course will go. When a 3.5-year-old is trying to play tag with you at the same time. But she's taken a lot of information from quite a few, from people she's had on the podcast to people that she's had mentor her, from me and from the friends that we have here. So a lot of time and effort has been put into it, and it's kind of twofold. There's she'll have an actual like physical guide if you're someone that likes to have those hands-on thing to do that can like guide you through it. And then there's also the talking portion if you're an individual that, you don't always like reading things in your hand or writing stuff out, but you're going to remember things when you talk it out. And that's what Reyna's got going for her. She's got both ways, and quite a few input and time over quite a few months. And I think it'll be well worth your time.
Oh, thanks, babe. Guys, we didn't plan this. We kind of just literally walked in to record off the cuff. So it was just sweet to hear that. Oh, thanks, babe. I have put a lot of time into this. So, guys, if you are not on the Restore waitlist, hop on that. Like I said, we are actually closing the group at the end of the month because we will kick off on January 27th. So only in a few weeks, you'll get a little bit more of those specific details that comes with the course. 6-month container, a course, walkthrough guide, exclusive interviews that are only for this community that I'm super excited to put together that won't be seen anywhere else, not on the podcast. So you have to be in the exclusive community. And then, guys, it's from a faith-based perspective. Everything runs through a biblical lens and just being aligned with your creator, because No matter, I think, especially in the health and wellness lifestyle, we see all these big shiny things that we should do, non-toxic swaps to make, which we've talked about, we've done them, mold and all of these other things to take into consideration when it comes to healing. But nobody is talking about putting down your phone or having hard conversations with your spouse or budgeting wisely so that you are creating margin in your life for rest. And it's diving into those untalked about and really uncovered areas to bring healing and light. So if you're not on the wait list, hop on there because you guys will get all the first details about the exclusives that I'm actually just putting together right now, which is so exciting. And I'm just really excited for you guys for 2025, what's going to bring for the Restore community, for this platform, and then for our family as well. So I hope this episode was really helpful for you guys. I know it was a little bit shorter than our common ones, but really just gave you a nugget of encouragement. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode. Thank you for listening, friend. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you don't want to miss any wisdom or encouragement, be sure to subscribe to the show. And don't forget to rate and review. Your feedback means so much and helps our community grow. If you're looking for more wellness wisdom and free resources, head over to livingwiselywell.com or get connected with me on Instagram at wiselywell. And if you're looking for a break from the hurried health lifestyle, check out my Return to Rest resource for tangible ways to slow down and finally find rest.